It's time for the Josh Kirby on Sports Podcast.
On this edition of the Josh Kirby on Sports Podcast, we have another week of the NFL to unwrap for you all, along with the NFL free agency deadline. Plus, as always, fantasy football files with Jason Kamlowski and a recap of the World Series. All that and so much more coming your way next. Stay tuned.
Glad you connected. This is Dave Johnson, voice of the Washington Wizards. You have connected to the right place because you are listening to my man, Josh Kirby on Sports Podcast.
Alrighty, back with you for another week of the Josh Kirby on Sports Podcast. As always, I am Josh Kirby, if you did not know that by now. But anyways, we are part of the Mayo Please Podcast Network. You can find them on Twitter at the Mayo Please, and you can check Quentin out on Twitter at Real Quentin Mayo. Thanks to Quentin for all he does for our podcast. As well, we're also brought to you by Route 11 Chips. Make sure you find a bag today inside your local Martin's, Food Lion, and Giant stores. And we're also brought to you by PM Plus Reserves. Let's go ahead, unpack another week of the NFL. The trade deadline happened on Tuesday. 4 o'clock is when the trade deadline stopped. So, just a brief recap. Nothing really major went on in free agency, which I was very surprised about. And I want to start with the Washington Redskins. They didn't make any moves, and apparently Trent Williams is back. He ended his holdout, but he failed a physical. So Still more drama over there in Washington, but Trent Williams did not get traded. Josh Norman couldn't get traded. I would have loved to see Josh Norman get traded for draft picks at least, because the Redskins are rebuilding and they need all the help they can get, So it was very interesting to see the Redskins not making a single move. So I don't know. But on the other hand, another surprising move, which was great for the Rams, but not so good for the Dolphins. The Rams traded Aqib Talib to the Dolphins, but Aqib Talib's on IR. So he's not helping the Dolphins out at all this season. So my thought process behind this is that Aqib Talib, when he's healthy, he can help the Dolphins out once he comes off IR, assuming he does. I would assume by next season he would be ready to play. But offloading cap for the Rams, and saving money there. But the Dolphins, I think they needed to do that for the fact that they're rebuilding and they just are overhauling. Because I think it's about time the Dolphins just stockpile on draft picks so they can get better and better each and every year. Another move I want to talk about, the New England Patriots doing what they do best. Picking up Mohamed Sanu from the New England Patriots because Josh Gordon went on IR. That story still confuses me. I don't really know why he's on IR, but then apparently they're saying Josh Gordon is healthy. The story really confused me when I saw it on all these different media outlets, but apparently there was some sort of rule or something that wasn't followed with the injured reserve. So once Josh Gordon gets off injured reserve officially, he will be released. I don't understand that, but Mohamed Sanu from the Falcons, a great addition to the Patriots, and the Patriots and legendary head coach Bill Belichick got the job done for them once again. And it goes to show, as I'm pulling up the stats for Mohamed Sanu against the Browns here, you look here, Mohamed Sanu got playing time. He got playing time, 2 receptions for 23 yards. Not a lot, but they got him in there. I'm rather surprised by the fact that he started so early, because you're coming to a new team with a new system, and I just thought it was really surprising. But, what a better team to go to than the Patriots. That they just seem to do great with whoever they have on their starting lineup. And Mohamed Sanu, great pick by the Patriots, and the Falcons are struggling. They're going to have to do some. I don't really think they did much on the trade deadline, but Mohamed Sanu was great for the Falcons. So happy for the Patriots. I can't say... they're just doing great things, They're probably going to win another Super Bowl. So enough with that. Moving on to the San Francisco 49ers. They have Emmanuel Sanders now. And it, just another piece of the puzzle for San Francisco to get them better, in their receiver core. And I like this move a lot. Emmanuel Sanders, I think he's going to play great for San Francisco. And Kenyon Drake got traded to the Cardinals from the Miami Dolphins. So more moves for Miami as well. So other quick thoughts, news before we get into unpacking the NFL week. Andy Dalton has been benched from the Bengals. He has been benched. Rookie Ryan Finley is taking over for him, and the Bengals are winless. So trying to find some way to win there in Cincinnati. So that's sort of a free agency recap. I'm really surprised about all the stuff that it wasn't really that much going on in free agency, and I was really surprised about. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see after the season, when free agency starts back up, to see what moves will be made. So let's start off Week 8 scoreboard. Minnesota over Washington. As you know, that Thursday night game was very, very interesting. There was only 1 touchdown scored in the game. And Case Keenum goes out with a concussion, so Dwayne Haskins plays 3 for 5 with 33 yards on the day. Adrian Peterson, he looked good against his former team, 76 yards. The Redskins defense played decent, and I feel like there was potential for the Redskins to go ahead in this game multiple times, but it just wasn't there, and only 1 touchdown scored for the Vikings. The Thursday night games are really weird to me. I'm not really sure why, but they're just really weird. Like, take a win how you can get it, I guess you could say. But Vikings improved to 6-2 after that 19-9 win over the Redskins. Seattle 27 over the Falcons 20. Philadelphia, they ran the football and gave them great things. You look at Jordan Howard, 96 yards. Miles Sanders, rookie out of Penn State, 74 yards. Carson Wentz, 35 yards. A team total, 218 yards rushing. The Bills are a good team, but the running game for the Eagles just overpowered the Bills. And 31-13 shows that the Eagles have a big division matchup next week against the... Who is it? Wait, no, they're on a bye. They're on a bye. I thought they played the Cowboys, but I guess I was mistaken there. But anyways, Eagles 4-4 in the division. Still a toss-up in the NFCs between the Eagles and the Cowboys. And like I said earlier, the Eagles and the Cowboys will have a chance to face once again down the road. And that might be for the division, in my opinion. The Chargers squeak one out against the Chicago Bears. Eddie Pinheiro misses a late field goal to give the Chargers basically the win there. And the Bears are not looking too good, in my opinion. You know, I've been looking at Mitch Trubisky, and he hasn't been putting up that many numbers. You know, he only had one interception, but not really a passing touchdown. Everything was done on the ground for Montgomery and the Bears, 135 yards on the day. But for the Chargers, their stats did not look good at all. Melvin Gordon only had 31 yards on the ground. So the Bears dominated the run game, but it came down to passing, in my opinion. Mostly a field goal game, but the Chargers took that away. Chargers are still struggling in the league, 3-5, but the Bears dropped to under 500 after that loss. The Detroit Lions over the New York Giants, 31-26. Daniel Jones, an impressive 4 touchdowns, but I'm surprised. Daniel Jones looked good, but it was mostly a back-and-forth game. And Matt Stafford, he looked pretty good as well, but it was mostly, back and forth. But the Lions came away with the win after late, So moving on to the Tennessee Titans over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 27-23. The Indianapolis Colts. That's what I want to get into. Jacoby Brissett. I was watching this game because this was for my Survivor pool, and I'm still alive. And Jacoby Brissett, clutch play, back inside his 20-yard line for a game-winning drive, essentially. And he gets thrown into the end zone, rolls out right, and finds T.Y. Hilton on the sideline for a clutch catch. And they keep it going, get Adam Vinatieri in field goal range, and they end up kicking a game-winning field goal for the Indianapolis Colts. And the Broncos, they played good, but it was another back-and-forth game. But the Colts gave Vinatieri the drive he needed to go down and kick that game-winning field goal. And I was very pleased by the Colts' performance. Jacoby Brissett, he didn't play well, but he still has promise for the Colts for this season. The Colts are 5-2. The Broncos are 2-6. Joe Flacco, the quarterbacks didn't look good in this game at all, to be honest with you, but back and forth game, but I liked what I saw from Jacoby towards the end of the game. And yeah, moving on, the Rams over the Bengals 24-10. New Orleans in Drew Brees' first game back improved to 7-1. Drew Brees with his first game back after Teddy Bridgewater taking over for him. 34 for 43, 373 yards with 3 touchdowns and an interception. Welcome back, Drew Brees. What does this mean for Teddy Bridgewater? I'm not sure about his future with the Saints, but I know Bridgewater has an opportunity to play somewhere as a starter. If he doesn't, I will be very surprised because Bridgewater should be a starter somewhere in the league after what he did in place of Drew Brees while he was recovering from his thumb injury. So, very impressive stuff there from the Saints, 31-9. Jacksonville over the Jets, 29-15. San Francisco over the Carolina Panthers, 51-13. New England over Cleveland, 27-13. The Houston Texans and the Oakland Raiders, a close one, 27-24. Back and forth game. Josh Jacobs for the Oakland Raiders, though. He didn't really look well. Only 66 yards on the ground. And both quarterbacks over 200 yards passing in this game. It was a shootout, and the Texans came away with the win. The Raiders are looking good, 3-4, but they just need to do something, make some sort of move to put them over the hump. But definitely an improvement from last season. Green Bay and Kansas City, Patrick Mahomes still not starting for the Chiefs. Matt Moore, 24 for 36, 267 yards for 2 touchdowns. But Aaron Rodgers. I'm going to say that one more time. Aaron Rodgers. What an amazing throw and catch. That was ridiculous. I think it was Williams who made that catch, Jamal Williams, in the end zone, if I am correct. But Aaron Rodgers, like inside the red zone, he gets backed up. The Chiefs defense rushes him, and off his back foot, fires one to the corner of the end zone for Williams for a touchdown. This game was close even without Patrick Mahomes, and I loved what I saw from both teams. But Aaron Rodgers came in clutch, and that's why Aaron Rodgers is one of the best, a future Hall of Famer right there. And wow, I just couldn't believe it. I saw it and I rewound it twice on TV, and I was like, wow, this cannot be happening. Aaron Rodgers actually did that. So Green Bay improves to 7-1 after that. And the Monday Night Football game, Pittsburgh over Miami, 27-14. Mason Rudolph looking good, 251 yards with 2 touchdowns and an interception. James Conner with 145 yards rushing. Dolphins fall to 0-7 on the season. That wraps up Week 8. Quick little thoughts, analysis. I just think it was an interesting week. A lot of close games to cover, but next week it's going to be even better. I'm hoping. A lot of great games I see on the lineups. Hopefully Pat Mahomes is back against Minnesota. That's going to be an interesting game to watch if he's back. But, we'll get into a full Week 9 preview coming up next after Fantasy Football Files with Jason Kamlowski. You're listening to the Josh Kirby on Sports Podcast. Stay tuned.
All right, guys, welcome back to Week 8. Fantasy Files with the Josh Kirby podcast. Just want to thank Josh, as always, for having me on. We are a little bit probably past the halfway point of the fantasy season, which is kind of crazy. We kind of gear up for this all year. Some people have been drafting probably since, February. As soon as the Super Bowl ends, I think best ball drafts start up. So it's kind of wild that this is halfway over. And, the fantasy football season is significantly shorter than baseball, and you don't put in quite the time that you would for a baseball season, as far as the everyday changing the lineup and making roster pickups and things like that. So every week is so important, and most people right now probably know if they're a contender, not a contender. Is it time to start packing it in for next year? A lot of stuff depends on the format that you're in. We've talked about this a little bit. If you're in a keeper league, maybe go try to, if you're like 2-6 right now, try to go get, a better keeper for next year. It's hard because there are a lot of leagues. If you are in that situation where you're, 0-8, 1-7, 2-6, and it looks like you're going to be on the outside looking in for the playoffs. It kind of stinks because, you put in all this time and you prep and over the summer for a draft, and then 8 weeks in, essentially your year's over. So, I hope for most of you listening out there, that's not the situation you're in. And my advice would be to keep playing. Unless you're in a situation, in like a keeper or dynasty league, where you're just trying to maybe, tank and get, higher draft pick. But that's kind of, it's kind of a tough thing, in some of these leagues because everybody pays their money and sometimes the the standings to be so tight. You hate to see a team just completely pack it in for next year. And last year I won a couple of championships. I won one league last year after I was 6-7 in the regular season, and I was pretty much left for dead after week 7. So you just got to keep grinding through, got to keep battling. So like I said, we're kind of at that halfway point, and where we're at right now is, the injuries at running back, and we've talked about just how tough that position is, but the injuries at running back are starting to mount up. Alvin Kamara out, David Johnson out, Saquon Barkley has missed time. Looks like James Conner right now is banged up. I mean, he kind of has an AC joint thing going on. Kerryon Johnson out for the year, out until week 16, but for all intents and purposes out for the year. And it's tough because that position, and I've mentioned this so many times. Those guys they get pounded every week. And it really stinks for a guy like Connor, who's probably coming off his best game of the year. And that Steelers offense has just not been the same without Ben Roethlisberger, but. This is the time of the year when you gotta, hopefully, you've got a handcuff or you're able to work the waiver wire and get somebody that's serviceable. But we were in the Slack chat for the Dynasty Football Digest website yesterday, and the guy was asking about making a trade to try to pick up a couple running backs because he's got Kamara hurt, he's got David Johnson hurt, he's got Chase Edmonds hurt. So I mean he was looking at starting. Like Jeffrey Wilson, who looks like might be hurt, and I forget who the other guy was, but and I told him I would not make a move. No matter the format, I would not make a move based on 1 week. That's kind of where you make a trade and you shortchange yourself a little bit value wise. I would not make a move like that just to try to fill in the gaps, and he was kind of in that tough spot where he was 4-4 and he really needs a win this week, but at the same time. There's no guarantee if you make a trade that's going to propel you to a win. I mean, and it's the NFL, so you're just as likely to see, someone like Alexander Madison last week. He rips off 61 yards on 13 carries as Dalvin Cook's backup, and he had 40 yards called back for penalties. So, I mean, there are guys to be owned that can be worthwhile, can be useful, that are probably getting dropped in some leagues or have been dropped in some leagues at the running back position. You might want to go and look at picking some of these guys up. Darrell Henderson, he out-touched Todd Gurley last week, and we've seen kind of over the season that Gurley's not doesn't look right. And, Darrell Henderson finds the end zone. I mean, all of a sudden he's very fantasy viable as, a RB3 flex play. The San Francisco running back situation, I mean, they've got a lot of good running backs there. Obviously Tevin Coleman had the huge game last weekend, but they at any given week, Matt Breida could rip something off. Raheem Mostert could rip something off. We've kind of seen Jeffrey Wilson Jr. do it. So, depending on the week in San Francisco, you could have a different back be fantasy viable. Rashad Penny got it going a little bit last week, 8 carries for 55 yards. And it's just with all these guys that are banged up and all these guys that are beat up, and you're probably lucky if you've avoided that, that kind of carousel this year with the injuries. I know right now in one of my leagues, I've got David Johnson and Chase Edmonds. I mean, obviously, I thought that was going to work out, and with both them being out, it's just going to be tough this week. But you can find some of these guys in the right matchups that could definitely help you. And they don't have to be like these marquee players. And really at running back, it's just touches are key. So if a guy like Connor is out and, it looks like Benny Snell might be out, and, if Jalen Samuels is kind of banged up, Trey Edmonds is the only other healthy back on the roster. I mean, go out and pick up Trey Edmonds and just see where things are at on Sunday morning. But that's kind of the moves you have to make. And you got to be proactive this time of year. And, some of those guys on the back end of your roster that maybe you were hoping, to break out, like a Corey Davis, or like a Sterling Shepard, you may need to part ways with them in order to pick up, a guy that might be able to help you, at the running back position or as a handcuff or something of that nature, because, at some point for some of these guys, it's not going to happen. And for guys like Joe Mixon, for guys like Davis, Sterling Shepard, Golden Tate, James Washington, just to name some guys that, I think we're probably getting drafted, in the top 7 or 8 rounds back in the summer. At this point, it's like, it's just probably not going to happen. And that stinks. And because those guys are, obviously talented guys and the expectations we had coming into the season were high for them, but you just, at some point, you've got to cut bait, and now is kind of that time where you can't be afraid to cut a guy because you're afraid, you're hoping for a breakout. I mean, those things are just so rare, that these guys break out late in the year. So, if it's between cutting a guy, like Corey Davis, to go out and pick up, like an Alexander Madison, you should do that. Because if Dalvin Cook goes down, Alexander Madison immediately becomes an RB2 and maybe possibly a back end RB1. Whereas, Corey Davis, honestly, week to week is hardly playable. So, those are kind of the things you've got to be looking at, just to see, where your roster's at, position yourself for the stretch run. Hopefully you're in a position where the playoffs are looking like something that, is going to be a good possibility for you, but you've got to churn the backside of that roster. And pick up guys that maybe potentially are going to have a roll down the stretch, and maybe you're sharp enough to kind of see that, maybe somebody like, I don't know, Deontay Johnson from Pittsburgh, who's kind of getting a lot of targets right now. Maybe, obviously he's a guy that would be worth picking up. Or Josh Reynolds with the injury to Brandon Cooks. Josh Reynolds has proven to be a pretty good player over time, when Brandon Cooks has been injured. So if Josh Reynolds can get, the target count, 5 or 6 targets, he can be very productive. So, those types of guys are the guys like right now you need to be looking for, to try to position yourself in a way that, down the stretch you might have someone who, is a difference maker, and you're not counting on, a Tuesday night waiver or fab run, to go out and get these guys. Be proactive about it now, churn the back of that roster and pick some of these guys up. So, just kind of looking though at last week, Cooper Kupp and the Rams just absolutely torched the Bengals, and the Rams are kind of an interesting team because, as dominant as they were last year, it just doesn't seem like they've been quite there yet. But in the right matchup, which obviously Cincinnati's just a cherry matchup for everybody. Especially the passing offense will come through. Talked about Gurley a little bit a minute ago. I don't think he's right. I don't think his health is right. It looks like Henderson is gonna cut into the work there, and and they may lean on the passing game down the stretch. Which if you've invested in Cooper Kupp, if you've invested in Robert Woods, that might not be a bad thing. So, the Rams, I think, could definitely be, one of those teams that maybe started out slow but starting to heat up a little bit. Tampa Bay, another team. Mike Evans just had a ridiculous week last week. I still think Godwin is the better player there, but Mike Evans just absolutely torched Tennessee, and really not a terrific matchup for him, but he just got it done, and in a game that was really fun to watch him just dominate the game, and it could have been a bigger game, honestly. He missed some opportunities to get in the end zone. It was just kind of wild. Finally, I got a big Kenny Golladay game, 6 for 123 and 2 touchdowns. We've kind of been waiting on that, and finally we got it. Juju went over 100 yards. Nick Hopkins went over 100 yards, which it looks like without Will Fuller, that's kind of going to be his thing. Julio with another big day. The Falcons are just so bad. They just have to throw the ball because they just can't stop anybody. But the guy who pops on the receiving side of things would be Aaron Jones, and who, I kind of recommended him as a buy candidate, and a sell candidate a couple weeks ago, and I still think I'm on that train because, once Devontae Adams gets back, once Montez Valdez-Scantling is healthy. I mean, you got to understand, like, they were operating in 3 wide receiver sets last week for Green Bay with, like, Jake Kumaro and Alan Lazard and, I forget who. So, like, they were kind of using Aaron Jones in the slot and getting him in matchups on a linebacker, which he's going to win that every time. But you're not going to see too many lines for a running back that have 7 catches for 159 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, that line just doesn't happen. So, kudos to you Aaron Jones owners who've kind of hung in there because, the last couple of weeks without having much else on offense, they've kind of been leaning on him. I don't expect that to continue when some of these guys get healthy, but I would definitely ride the wave, while I could. As far as, rushing games go, we had a couple surprises at the top with Connor having easily his best game of the year. David Montgomery finally got going. I mean, Matt Nagy is just, I don't know what he's doing. I mean, I picked the Bears as like my sleeper Super Bowl pick, and, they've just been bad. I mean, just look at like a franchise that can't recover from the playoff loss last year. But, if they would just give David Montgomery the ball, they might have a chance to win more games. I mean, he was an absolute monster on Sunday. Christian McCaffrey just completely matchup proof. I mean, even in a 38-point loss, he still had 114 yards and a touchdown. Obviously, we talked about Coleman with the big day. Nick Chubb got it going, 131 yards, did not find the end zone against that tough New England defense. Cleveland is still a dumpster fire. Dalvin Cook just continues to get it done. I mean, he's been arguably the most consistent fantasy running back this year outside of McCaffrey. Jordan Howard, Chris Carson. I mean, we're starting to kind of see like some of these names that we typically see up there, in the top 10 running backs each week. But then you see some names like Carlos Hyde, Adrian Peterson, people you wouldn't expect to see. But at this point, it's starting to, get a little bit more into clear focus for running backs as far as, what we can expect from them every week. It was nice to see guys like Connor and Montgomery get going because, they've just got so much talent and they're just so young. You hate to give up on them as an owner, and you want to see those guys get going because it obviously makes the game more fun. I mean, when James Conner's going good, I mean, Pittsburgh's fun to watch. And I think Montgomery for Chicago, I think they're going to need him down the stretch because Tree Cohen's 5'6". I mean, you can't saddle him up and give him 15 carries a game. So he's going to need David Montgomery as much as the Bears in general will, because Cohen is probably he's just a better like complementary back. So hopefully they keep just giving him like 26, 27 touches a game, and they can kind of get going with that. As far as quarterbacks go, Matt Schaub had like the performance of the week as far as yardage goes, and like I said, I mean, Atlanta's just so bad. They just got to throw the ball like nonstop because they can't stop anybody. And in the NFC South, I mean, they're gonna get matchups where they have to throw because teams can put up points. They're going to play the Saints. They're going to play the Buccaneers. If Cam gets right, they're going to have to play the Panthers. I mean, it's just Atlanta's like the Coors Field of football right now. When you play them, you can expect a lot of fantasy points for your, against them. But, at the same time, whether it's Schaub or Matt Ryan, it doesn't matter. They're going to put the ball up a bunch, and that's just what it's going to be. I think in 8 games this year, I think they've had 7 games where they threw for at least 300 yards. So, Atlanta continues to be, kind of an offensive factory. Drew Brees comes back with a huge game. Some people are like, well, why Drew Brees coming back? Well, Drew Brees is coming back because he's Drew Brees. He's one of the best to ever do it. Talked about Goff a little bit. Matt Stafford with a big game. Andy Dalton, who's going to get benched, and we'll talk a little bit about a couple teams that'll probably go into evaluation mode, which is going to render some of these guys useless down the stretch. Danny Jones had a really good game, bounced back from kind of some early, ugly throws. Aaron Rodgers with a ridiculous performance Sunday night. Beating the Chiefs without Mahomes. That game would have been so much more fun with Mahomes. And at the QB position, I mean, it's just so deep. I mean, we've talked about this so many times. It's just so deep. I mean, Deshaun Watson was like very good last weekend, and he finished as QB 12 on the slate. I mean, that's just, it's just ridiculously deep how many quarterbacks are out there that can produce. So, quarterback's a position, again, I don't know why anybody would take a quarterback early, because you'll find production from so many different places, at the quarterback position. Now, this week we got 4 teams on bye, so, you're going to have to dance around that a little bit. The week gets started with the 49ers and Cardinals, which, I don't anticipate being a high-scoring game. I think the 49ers should win that one pretty easily. But, the 49ers backfield is really banged up. Obviously, the Cardinals backfield super banged up. Kenyon Drake should get all the touches he can handle for Arizona, which, hopefully finally they can unleash him. But I don't see, if David Johnson's healthy, that he's going to be able to hold on to any type of a major market share of carries. But we got some interesting games this week coming up. I mean, the Vikings and the Chiefs, that one should be a fun one. Look for Dalvin Cook to have a big game. The Packers play the Chargers. Always good to see Aaron Rodgers lock up with Phillip Rivers. That should be another good one. The Patriots play the Ravens on Sunday night. I mean, obviously everybody's going to want to see how Lamar can do going up against that terrific Patriots defense. The Bears, visit the Eagles, and honestly, if the Bears lose this game this weekend, I mean, they're gonna have a hard time getting in the playoffs. So, you don't want to call it a must-win at the halfway point, but I mean, this is as close to a must-win game for Week 9 as you're going to get. But I think the game that I'm probably most interested in from a fantasy perspective would be the Buccaneers and the Seahawks, because both of those teams can be thrown on. Jameis going to Seattle is not obviously a spot that I love, but at the same time, I mean, Matt Schaub just threw for 400 or 500 yards against Seattle, albeit away from home. But that could be a game that definitely could potentially be a sneaky shootout. I would definitely look for Russ to just eat this weekend. I mean, he's just going to smash. So that's probably the game on Sunday that I'm most looking forward to. And then, we've got some duds: Texans, Jags, Jets, Dolphins, Titans, Panthers, Browns, Broncos, and we've got some mediocre games. But we're kind of hitting that spot in the season where bye weeks are going to start hurting you. You're you're going to want to, obviously plan for that. And with some of the teams that are off this week, Cincinnati's off, and just speaking of a team like that, some of these teams are going to go into evaluation mode. Cincinnati's already benched Andy Dalton, and it looks like they're going to see what they've got with Ryan Finley, which is not good for anybody's fantasy value on Cincinnati. I mean, Joe Mixon has just been an absolute disaster. Tyler Boyd, that's going to be a mess. I would avoid Cincinnati players at all costs. I mean, if you invested in Joe Mixon, I mean, you can't drop him. I mean, you almost have to play him. Same thing with Tyler Boyd, but it's going to be a rough ride with Ryan Finley. Kind of running the show there. I would say same thing. You're kind of seeing already. I mean, the Dolphins are just trying to lose every game, but, traded Kenyon Drake because they want to play Mark Walton, which makes a ton of sense. I mean, because they got to see what they have back there. The Redskins, I would say at some point will kind of be in that boat too, because they're going to have to figure out, what they've got at quarterback if Dwayne Haskins can kind of be a guy. So, some of these teams that are just like really, really bad. And I hesitate to say that the Buccaneers will pull the plug on Jameis because, it's not like they've really got a significant backup plan. But some of these teams are just really bad. I mean, they could really start looking at other guys to get into evaluation mode and just kind of see where they're at as a franchise to figure out what their draft needs are going to be. So, and that stinks for us as fantasy owners, right? Because, we invested draft picks in these players and we did it, thinking that player X was going to be quarterback or player X was going to be running back. And, things happen where these teams go into evaluation mode. So you you're gonna have to work your way through that. You're gonna have to figure that out. But that's kind of what we do, right? Like we figure it out, and we do what we can to work around that, and we'll pick up players that we need to pick up, and we'll try to fill in the gaps and just keep moving. So as I watch the Nationals right now, they are down 1-0 to the Astros. Just want to give a shout out to all Nationals fans. I mean, this is an awesome thing in Game 7 to be able to watch this. And I'm rooting for the Nationals in this game to win. So, going to keep rooting on the Nationals. I know Josh is a big Nationals fan. But with fantasy football, keep grinding. Keep working at it. Hopefully, you're getting something out of this. If there's a different format you want, if you'd rather talk to me, if you'd rather me talk about specific players, specific matchups, drop some comments down there in the comment section, or give feedback on Twitter. I'm at Jason Kimlowski on Twitter, or shoot something to Josh, whatever it is, because obviously we want to make this segment as good as we can for you. In some weeks there's going to be less to talk about than others. So if there's something you want to hear about, reach out, let us know. Other than that, best of luck on week 9, and I will see you back here next week for week 10. See ya.
The Josh Kirby on Sports podcast, part of the Mayo Please podcast network, is sponsored by Route 11 Chips. Make sure you grab a bag today inside your local Martin's, Food Lion, and Giant stores. And our new sponsor and fellow sports fans at PM Plus Reserves, providing reserve studies for homeowner and condominium associations in the Washington metropolitan area for the past 30 years. Make sure you check us out on all streaming platforms via the Mayo Please and the Josh Kirby on Sports podcast. You can also find the Josh Kirby on Sports podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, along with the Mayo Please on Twitter. Have any questions for the show? Feel free to shoot us an email at kirbyonsports@gmail.com.
Alrighty, coming back to you on the Josh Kirby on Sports podcast. Thank you so much to Jason Kamlowski, as always, for Fantasy Football Files. I'm coming to you very late in the morning hours. Yes, the Washington Nationals are World Series champions. My voice is dead. I lost my voice. I yelled. I screamed. DC has their 3rd championship. The Capitals, the Mystics, and the Washington Nationals. What a crazy ride this has been. They were 19-31. You know that. Their backs against the wall. And they have done what no other team has done before. They won all their games on the road in the World Series. No other franchise in the NBA, NHL, or MLB has done this besides the Washington Nationals. They have won 4 on the road, and they won the World Series. What an accomplishment. The Nationals did not lose a single road game. They lost all 3 at home. It seemed like there was a chance that they could have been eliminated. We'll go back to Game 6 there. The Nats blew it open 7-2 after a judgment call. Trey Turner hit a chopper. Running to first base. I'm trying to recall this as accurately as I can here. I am just mind blown. By the way, I bet you most of DC and the DC sports fans are celebrating hard down there at the bullpen, Capital One Arena outside there, wherever you are, and just wow. I'm definitely not getting any sleep. It's 1:48 a.m. as I am recording this segment. So, but Anyways, Trey Turner running up to first base apparently gets in the way of the first baseman's catch, and his glove comes off. A lot of people argued about the call. I was sort of upset, but yet again, it was a judgment call. And I'm just thinking to myself here. I'm literally thinking to myself here, what if that cost the Nationals the World Series? But then you have Anthony Rendon. Anthony Rendon. He homered after that in the 7th inning. A 2-run homer to put the Nats up 5-2. Then Rendon with a double to close the game out to force Game 7. What an accomplishment. I mean, their backs were against the wall in that game. It looked like nothing was going, and after that bad call, they just lit up the Nationals bullpen. That's what I am thinking, because Anthony Rendon, I believe he was very angry, and he came out and he jacked the game winning. He jacked essentially would have been the game winning home run. Yeah. Great series all in all. Let me recap it for you a little bit. We will start with game number 1 of the World Series. Washington wins 5-4. Garrett Cole on the mound against Max Scherzer. As you know, Garrett Cole, excellent pitcher, but by a run, the Nationals defeated them. Starting off, Houston always gets off to an early start, scoring. Gurriel doubled in the first inning in that ball game. It's been a trend. Houston at home would score early. The Nationals would always come back after that. So 5-4 in that. The plays in there, I mean, Springer in the 7th inning homered. Springer doubled to deep right, and Tucker scored. But you had homers from Zimmerman, Soto. I mean, everybody's coming up big. Zimmerman, Soto, just out phenomenal. 21 years old, just turned 21, and Juan Soto is phenomenal. You got Robles, he looked decent. Adam Eaton steps up when needed. And game number 2, they come right back into Houston, pick apart Justin Verlander, and win 12-3. Then they get that night off, and Houston wins 3 straight in Washington. And I believe most of the Nationals fans were thinking, wow, are we really going to blow this World Series? I still had faith, being that I am a Nationals fan. And I believe some people were just stressed about it. And I was too going into that Game 6. I watched it all, and it ended up being how fate would have turned out. They won 3 in Washington, came back. Washington won 7-2, blew the game open. After that, Anthony Rendon homer. After the series of events with the umpires, then Davey Martinez getting ejected, and Davey Martinez was fired up. I think he put everything he had into that, and the umpires made little calls that Davey Martinez didn't agree with. And I think that's one of the main reasons why he just exploded in this game, because of the call that was made. They were trying to review it, not a reviewable play, judgment call. Could not put the game under protest because it was a judgment call. He ends up getting ejected from the ball game. Anthony Rendon jacks that homer. We go to Game 7. But bear with me here. Bear with me here, anybody who's listening. What if that homer didn't happen? What if it didn't happen? What if the Astros ended up winning because of that call the umpires made? Just think about that. Now that it's all over, think about how you, as a Nationals fan, would have felt if that happened. I mean, I just can't believe it. I would have been stunned out of my mind. I would have been angry. But no, the Nationals stayed in the fight, their motto all year, and they forced Game 7. Game 7 tonight. What a game. I'll tell you that. You got, who was it? It was Rendon. He homered. Gurriel homered in the second. Correa scored in a run. And, I mean, that just sent the Astros a 2-0 lead. But the Nats were still in it. I knew that. It was getting late into the 7th inning. Then Anthony Rendon splits the lead in half. So 1-2. Then Kendrick hits a clutch home run right off of the foul pole. Then bases get loaded. Eventually, some more runs are scored. I'm just amazed by this performance the Nationals have had. I'm just amazed. For the Astros, you had Zach Greinke. Zach Greinke, hands down to Zach Greinke. He played a heck of a ball game. 6.1 innings, 2 hits, 2 runs, 2 earned runs, 2 walks, 3 strikes, and 1 home run off of him. But Zach Greinke, you weren't getting a ball by him. As a National, if you hit the ball straight up to him, he got it through to first base. And hands down to Zach Greinke, he played great. Then Will Harris came in and gave up the home run. Then Osuna loaded the bases. Presley Smith and Yakurti finished off the game. But for Washington, Max Scherzer, he went 5 innings. He looked decent. And another point I totally forgot to mention here was the fact that Scherzer was ruled out for Game 5, in D.C. Scherzer had a stiff neck. He got scratched. Joe Ross started. They ended up losing that game, as I said earlier. But Max Scherzer came back, and I knew if the Nationals were going to force Game 7, that Max Scherzer would be on the mound. And he did. He got the job done. 7 hits, 2 runs, 2 earned runs, 4 base on balls, and 3 strikeouts and a home run. Then Corbin came in for 3 innings, and Daniel Hudson finished the game. So didn't have to get a Doolittle. Didn't have to get a Rodney. The Nationals only used 1, 2, 3 pitchers in that ball game. But everybody was fresh. So I wasn't going to be surprised if they threw out everybody to try to get that World Series win. The Nationals have been waiting a long time after getting knocked out of the division series year in year again. And they finally did it. And it's in crazy fashion how they did it. They won in Houston games 1 and 2. In 3, 4, 5 they lost. In 6, 7 they won. All on the road. Has never happened before. So everybody in D.C. celebrated. I have to be at work tomorrow. I don't know how I'm going to get up, but I cannot believe it. First, the Capitals, the Mystics, then the Nationals. It's crazy. But I will try to bring you more coverage on a next episode. I'm so sorry, but I mean, I just can't believe this actually happened. But I will bring you more coverage, more news from the World Series and everything on episodes to come. A lot to talk about during the off season. I will get to that in another episode. But the Nationals, first time in franchise history, World Series champions, and that wraps up an exciting MLB season. What a great World Series, hands down. One of the best championships in all of sports, in my opinion. And, I mean, Game 7 of the World Series, can it get any better than that? Can it get any better than that? I'm not sure if you can top that World Series. The road team winning all 4. So that's the World Series recap I have. The Nationals won it. I'm sure excited. I'm not sure if you can tell, but I'm just, my voice is dead. I screamed so long after, watched everybody cheering, holding up the World Series trophy. Steven Strasburg, MVP, well-deserved, sir. And that wraps it up. Right now, we're going to get into your Week 9 preview. Starting actually today at 8:20, so a couple hours from now, the San Francisco 49ers face the Arizona Cardinals. Starting off Sunday, November 3rd, the Washington Redskins and the Buffalo Bills, the Houston Texans and the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Tennessee Titans and the Carolina Panthers, the Minnesota Vikings and the Kansas City Chiefs, the New York Jets and the Miami Dolphins, the Chicago Bears and the Philadelphia Eagles, the Indianapolis Colts and the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Detroit Lions and the Oakland Raiders, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Seattle Seahawks, the Cleveland Browns and the Denver Broncos, the Green Bay Packers and the Los Angeles Chargers, the New England Patriots and the Baltimore Ravens in the 8:20 Sunday Night Football slot, and an NFC East battle between the 4-3 Dallas Cowboys and the 2-6 New York Giants on Monday Night Football. You have bye weeks from the Bengals, Falcons, Rams, and Saints in Week 9. That is your Week 9 preview of the NFL, and that about wraps up the show. Once again, want to thank our sponsors, PM Plus Reserves, Route 11 Chips. It was an exciting night as I'm recording this segment. I will get this up ASAP. Thanks, as always, to the Mayo Please Podcast Network. As always, we are part of them. And once again, thank you to Dave Johnson, JR Beats Official, and MPT Now Productions. You know where to find us, the Josh Kirby on Sports Podcast and the Mayo Please Podcast Network, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all the social media platforms, basically, and all streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Play, and amazing. So until next time, Josh Kirby signing off, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Peace out.